This dissertation is the document submitted to the appropriate authority to support that the candidate is ready for getting academic degree or professional qualification. Actually, this thesis is an important component of master's degree and especially very important for the award of PhD. So DNB 3-year course or 2-year course or 5 or 6-year courses which we are running now currently, it is a mandatory requirement that the candidate has to submit a thesis. This writing a thesis actually gives the candidate the experience of how to conduct research, because when he or she becomes a full-fledged consultant or a faculty, one of the important components of any professional person's life is to do research, which is an important part of contribution of one's inquisitiveness, and reporting the findings of the study for the benefit of mankind is the whole purpose of this thesis writing. Please do not take it as a unnecessary burden, but take it as a challenge and put your full mind and soul into writing the thesis, so that not only you produce a effective and meaningful manuscript, but also you also in the process gain the knowledge of how to do a scientific research. This is, as I said, this is an essential component of training in especially when you're doing post graduation and beyond, and a method to inculcate the research components. In the professional growth of any individual, there are at least 3 or 4 vital elements. One is, especially when you're talking about physicians, you should have the clinical skills necessary to diagnose, treat, and take care of a patient. That's the first important component. So you must be clinically competent. Suppose you have done DNB or MD, you should be good at your work. That is first. Second thing is you have to have a capability to teach, develop an aptitude to teach. So whatever you have learned, you have to teach the um, personnel who are working under you. It could be a nurse, it could be a junior doctor. So you should inculcate that habit. The third component, which we are dealing with now, is the research component. You should have a research bent of mind, so that whatever you observe, you must note. And if you think that there is something which can be improved upon, suppose you observe something which is better than what was being done, you have to systematically do the data collection, analyze, and then interpret the data. Before that, we have to write a protocol or proposal, and this has to be approved by the competent ethical authority. Normally, we have academic ethics committee or scientific review committee, and for drug trials, we have the actual medical ethics committee. So these committees go into the details of the research which is being proposed, only to see that there is no harm done to the patient. That is the only idea. It is not to um, make it the process more difficult. So the idea is to protect the individuals, especially you get individuals who can be vulnerable, who are children, who are women, who are elderly, and there are patients. So we have to protect their interests. So whenever we do research, it is mandatory to maintain the safety of the patient. With that intention, the ethics committees will go into the details of the proposed project, and they suggest modifications, or if the project is well done, it may be approved straight away. So please take all the suggestions made by the ethics committee seriously and apply that to the proposed project and modify the project accordingly, and then resubmit the project for final approval. After that, the subject can be enrolled depending upon the type of study. You have various types of studies. You can have prospective studies, you can have retrospective studies, you can have case cohort studies, observational studies, randomized studies, etc. Depending upon the nature of the study, you have to modify the protocol and carry on this study. As far as the national board guidelines are concerned, once you join the DNB course, we are talking about National Board of Examination guidelines. Once you join the course, within 90 days, you are expected to submit the thesis protocol. That is the proposal which has been already approved by the ethics committee. So you have to submit the proposal to the national board, which has been approved by the ethics committee at the local hospital or the institution where you have joined. So it becomes very difficult once you have entered the specialty. You have to approach your guide, sometimes called as supervisor, but for DNB terminology, it is guide. So you have to approach the guide and discuss with him or her about the possible subject of interest, research interest, and then you have to do the write up the proposal. After searching the literature, calculating sample size, so many things are involved. So you have to approach a statistician, you have to go through the literature, and the guide will help you to do all these things. So the guide is an important part of your thesis protocol, thesis writing procedure. So you have to always keep in confidence the guide and then develop a protocol which has to be submitted within 90 days. Please mind it, within 90 days of joining the DNB course, you are expected to submit the protocol. And the thesis must be completed before 6 months of final examination. Suppose you are taking the exam in December, your thesis must have been completed by June. That is ideally, if we will still have 6 months to prepare for the exam. So you must ensure that your thesis is completed before 6 months of the examination, so that the thesis will not come in way of your preparation for the examination. This is very vital. All the students must note this point. You must finish your thesis before 6 months of the final examination. This is good for you actually, because you have done away with the thesis writing and it has been submitted, so you can concentrate on the actual study for the examination. So it will be June for people who are appearing for examination in December, and it will be December for people who are taking examination in June. So this is an important component, and this is has several components. The components will include the introduction.
Only, sir.
Yes.
I think Albin sir is in, sir.
Oh, Albin has come. That's great. I was trying to fill in the gap. So
Sorry.
I think Albin has come. We will wait for his deliberations so that we can. If there are any doubts, feel free to ask. This is an open session. We will finish by 16:25. 16:25 to 16:30 is the question hour. You please write your question on the chat box. We'll be happy to handle them. Dr. Albin is the in charge of research wing. He is the national head for Narayana hospitals in the country in terms of research. He's widely experienced. His basic background is pharmacology. That helps him to be a research in charge. And may I request Albin to start sharing his screen and please present the deliberations.
Thank you, Dr. Srinath. And first of all, apologies to everybody who joined in early. I think my Zoom just suddenly decided to not work. And so I had to reload the entire software. So it took me some time. Sorry about that. Okay, so I think we have just about 45 minutes, if I'm correct, or even less than that. So what I would like to do is maybe take this into 2 or 3 small parts and then go straight into questions. And I think Dr. Muralidhar was actually already kind of giving you the administrative requirements from perspective of what is the national board expecting and how soon you need to submit your thesis and other things. Uh, for me, I think the message that I'd like to give to everybody out here, just as important it is that you learn your clinical skills by doing your DNB, it is important for you to develop some research skills. And that is the reason why the national board has made it a mandatory requirement that you submit this at least 6 months prior to you writing your exam. So it just shows that the importance that they give for the development of clinical skills is as equivalent they've given the skills to do a research project. Now, many of us sometimes are told that we don't know how to do research and we are not taught how to do research. And we understand that because that is something which, when you all did MBBS, there was not much of it in the curriculum. But of late, even the Medical Council of India, which is now becoming the National Medical Council, has included in their syllabus right now that there has to be time spent in learning about research. So I think the importance about research is to actually help you to stay ahead of the changes that is happening in the scientific community. And unless you know how to interpret these changes and how to adapt these changes into your practice, you will not be able to really stay abreast of the new evidences and knowledge that is coming in. So this is like a learning exercise that you have to compulsorily do. And sometimes it's sad that some people lose the opportunity and they just try to complete this off as a checkbox. So today we'll try to cover the topic about thesis writing in a very broad way about what is the art of thesis writing. You have uh, when you say a thesis, it's basically a summary of a particular journey that you've taken into the world of research when you are doing your post graduation. So all theses, when you do this, it's basically a research project. The protocol always has to tell what it is doing. So it has a title page, and the title page will tell the people about the title of the project, the institution details, and the name of the student and the guide. Many times this information is left out when you share the protocol to the ethics committee, when you share your protocol with others. This is very critical, to tell who you are, what are you trying to do, where are you coming from. And as you know, as Dr. Madhubudhu was mentioning, the role of the guide here is very, very important. And it also goes back to the guide that there is a lot of time and effort that they have to put in making sure that the student is able to complete this task. And just like how you're taught your clinical skills, they also need to teach you some aspects of this. So that's why you are acknowledging right in the beginning itself that you are being guided by so and so person. Then comes the aspect about abstract. Now, though abstract comes right in the beginning, it should be written the last. And sometimes we feel that when you write an abstract, you just write it because it's asked as an abstract. You write the protocol in 10 lines and then you write the whole protocol in 10 pages. So it's not like that. An abstract is a small document which is a summary of what is planning to be done. Now here, again, if you're writing a protocol, it should be telling people about what you plan to do. If you're writing an abstract for a thesis, you are telling what you did. Now, this is very important to differentiate. We have seen many people writing the abstract of the protocol like as though they already completed it, as though everything has been done. And the same thing, they keep it in the thesis. No, that is not what is expected here. This is, when you're writing a protocol, it is about what you are going to do. And then in the final thesis is what you have done. So if you're telling what you're going to do, your language should be in such a manner that it is a future tense. Then it has to be structured. Better to keep it structured, like introduction, methodology, results, and or methods, and your statistical analysis plan. When you're writing your protocol, when you're writing your full thesis, you need to talk about results and then discussion. Now, why should it be structured? Because it's much better to read, and also you are clearer in your points that you are telling. But sometimes people are more used to writing a non-structured. What's the difference between the two? Non-structured one does not have subheadings. You just write it like continuous text. But what does it have usually? It has a short description of the study. What is your research question? So it is like giving a teaser to a movie. You get a new movie that's coming out, you get a trailer. So this is something like a trailer. It is telling the person, what are you going to expect by reading my protocol? Or when you're giving it in your thesis, what are you going to expect by reading my thesis? So this is very important from a perspective of writing an abstract. And that's why I said this has to be written the last. You write your entire protocol, and then have a clear idea of what you're doing in your protocol, and that is when you will write an abstract of that protocol. But in the positioning of it in the thesis or in the protocol, it comes immediately after the title page. Now, these are the different sections that you need to write. Now, before we talk about results, now we're talking about a protocol. Okay. Now, many times we notice that there is no differentiation between an introduction and a review of literature. People just start writing up their introduction and they just continue into review of literature. But there is a difference between these two. Now, the introduction is all about what is your study going to be doing? Why is it important? Okay, you need to be able to tell the people that this is an important topic that I have to write a thesis on, or I am to do a protocol, I need to do a study on. Now, if you don't tell that, people really don't understand what you're trying to do. So that's why the introduction, just like any movie also, you have a small intro, which if you miss that intro, you sometimes miss the whole idea of that movie. So like that, an introduction is about telling people what is it that you're planning to do. Now, that what should be very clearly identified. In the review of literature, which is different from the introduction part of it, is actually a summary of all the information that has happened so far in the topic. Now, you're not going to be doing a thesis topic which is being done for the first time in the world. Okay, there will be somebody who has done something similar to it somewhere, or most of the times it will be something that is already done in your own institution, or it will be something that is done in your own department. But you are trying to tell the world that I am structuring my research according to what has already been published. Now, you may be doing something really unique in your entire exercise, but you need to prove that also, that you're doing something unique. You have to say that on this particular topic, this is the kind of literature that is available, and none of it is giving the information that I am asking for. And hence, I would like to do my study. So a review of literature is an important step in getting your research question also clarified. What is your real research question will emerge from the whole aspect of review of literature. Now, I see many people writing this as bullet points. They write it as just some, a summary of so many et al, some et al wrote this. That is not a review of literature. Review of literature is like a short essay where you've read all the literature that is there, and you are giving a summary of that particular literature for people to understand, saying that my topic is relevant because others have done this, they have found something like this, and it is important for me to find it in my own population or in my own study, and I'm trying to see if I can get the same answer, or I'm trying to see if I can get a new answer to my question. So I'll give you an example now. Maybe you're doing a study on COVID, and you're doing a study to understand, does patients who have COVID develop myocardial infarction or an acute coronary event. Now, what will be your introduction? You will say your introduction is that COVID is a new pandemic that is affecting a lot of people. People are, a percentage of people are dying. A percentage of that people are dying so rapidly that it's likely to be because of an acute myocardial event. We need to find out whether this is a significant problem even in our institution. Then in the review of literature, you will be telling a little about COVID. You won't talk too much about COVID because everybody knows about COVID. Now, why I'm telling you this is important. Now, sometimes you may be doing a surgery PG, a DNB, and you may be doing a particular a thesis topic on cholecystectomy. Now, cholecystectomy is done for removal of gallbladder with gallbladder stone. You don't have to sit and explain all that in your review of literature. You don't have to talk about gallbladder, where gallbladder is located, what happens to the gallbladder, what is the function of the gallbladder, where do you get gallstones, how does it produce, what is cholecystitis. You don't have to give all that explanation. You can go straight to the topic that, we're talking about cholecystectomy. Cholecystectomy is a surgery that was introduced in so and so period. And currently, previously it used to be done as an open surgery, but now people do it in a keyhole surgery. It's a laparoscopic procedure that is being done, and it is done for this purpose. And then you go straight into your problem. Now, cholecystectomy, whether done, if you're comparing it between laparoscopic versus a robotic cholecystectomy, then you can talk about, a little bit about, why laparoscopic, how did laparoscopic cholecystectomy evolve, and what are the advantages that you're seeing, and what are the advantages that you're getting with robotic thing, cholecystectomy. So what is it that you would like to talk about? So similarly, like that, even it may be a topic in an emergency situation where you're trying to see whether a particular way of intubation is going to improve the patient's outcomes. Now, you don't have to start talking about intubation. You don't have to talk about how tracheostomy is to be done. See, this is, something which I see very commonly students doing. They simply write stories around it, and the main picture of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to answer, what you're trying to say is left out, or it is dug somewhere. People have to, sit down and try to get it out. Now, even when you're writing your final thesis, please don't write stories on the topic, because you will not be able to communicate to the reviewer what is it that you're trying to do. And then the reviewer will just simply come back with your comment and saying that the review of literature has no relevance and you've gone all over the place. Okay, so be very careful about writing this section. And a very important aspect of a review of literature is two things: plagiarism and references. Now, there are plagiarism softwares which is tested on every thesis. So if you submit a thesis, the national board will check for plagiarism. And it is very simple to do that. You just need to have the software and run your protocol through your thesis to it. It will come up with a score immediately. And if you are because of the search engines being so powerful nowadays, it will tell exactly which journal article this particular sentence was picked up from. And if you have not given a reference to it, you are in trouble. So plagiarism check is very important, and so be very careful about lifting information from articles and putting it directly into your thesis or your protocol, whatever you're doing, because it shows that you don't have respect to the person who did it first, and you're just sitting and copying it. So it's not going to be tolerated, and a national board is checking for it, and you will get into trouble for that. Second part of it is the referencing. Now, national board wants it to be referenced using a Vancouver style. Now, please learn to use a reference management software. It is now highly, I would consider it to be primitive if you are still putting your references manually. You have to learn that software just like you're learning how to use Word and Microsoft PowerPoint and Excel. You need to learn how to use a reference management software. You have to learn how to find references and input your references in the correct place. Now, time and again, I see students sitting and doing referencing in the manual fashion. And in doing so, what will happen is you will put in references which are not important. Sometimes you'll give references which are not at all quoted in your text. And sometimes you'll put certain text and give no references to it. Trust me, the DNB is looking for all of this. They are checking all of this, and they find this, they'll immediately send a comment back saying that your review of literature is inadequate. And you will have to repeat that entire section, which means to say you will have to do a complete fresh printout, complete fresh binding, and then submit it again. You will lose time. Now, the last part of it is the materials and methods. This is as far as the protocol is concerned. Now, when you're doing it, please keep in mind that when you're writing a protocol, it is how the study is going to be done. But when you write your thesis, it is how the study was done. I have seen thesis protocols being sent back by National Board just because you have put a wrong tense. People have just copied the protocol document and put it there, and they have got into trouble. Previously, protocol verification used to happen by the National Board. I've seen them sending it back saying that this looks like as though you have already completed the study, because the student has just written as though he's completed the whole thing in the wrong tense. But now this is the job of the scientific review committee to check on this. But it is an important skill to remember when you're sending something to somebody, you have to communicate correctly. It also reflects on your communication skills. So important to keep the right tense. If you are talking about something you're going to do in the future, you have to put it in the future tense. If you're talking about something which you have already completed, it is past tense. This is simple high school grammar, or even I would say nowadays it is 6th standard English grammar. So be very careful about this. Read it once before you submit it to any body, whether it is to your scientific review committee or to your ethics committee or your final thesis. Please make sure you read it and correct all the tense. There are softwares for you to do that. And if you can pay for it, you can buy Grammarly. You can use a free software for some time. There are tense. It corrects all these things and it will help you. But a very important step is that you should be able to read your thesis. And if you go to the DNB guidelines on writing thesis, it says that very clearly. Scientific writing is about communicating in the right language. So it asks you to read it several times to make sure that you are communicating it correctly. It tells that very clearly. So you should follow that when you're writing your thesis protocol. Now, another common error I see with regards to, and this is again, it's come back. It is, I've seen theses being returned. Results is about what you found. You only need to give the results of the study. Don't give your interpretations there. Don't tell we found a very significant difference between treatment A and treatment B. Don't use the word very significant. You should just say treatment A cost this, treatment B cost this. The numbers were different by this much. So results is what you found in the study. Don't give descriptives in results. If you give descriptives, then you'll have nothing to write in your description, in your discussion. So I've seen a thesis coming back where the reviewers comment to us, the results and the discussion is the same. So please correct it and send it back again. Mistake number 2. Review of literature is supposed to talk about everything that you knew before you started the study. And then the discussion is about what you found and maybe some future direction. But what I've seen some people doing is in discussion say they come up with completely new information. Again, this is one more reason why DNB will send it back. I've seen theses returned saying that you've added too many new references in the discussion section. So discussion is about what you found and how is it to be interpreted. So for interpreting it, to support your interpretation, maybe you can give one or two references, but it should not be something completely new. You can't introduce a whole new topic into the discussion section. If you do that, you will get into trouble, because it is as though you did not talk about it in the review of literature. That means to say you did not think about it when you did your study methodology, and that's why your study findings are weak. So immediately they will reject your thesis. So be very careful about these sections. Results, talk only about what you found. Don't give descriptors. Don't talk about, this was significant, more significant, this is highly significant. Those kind of words and all, don't use it there. The discussion section is where you need to describe your results and give the reader an impression about why you felt that your study found something and that whatever you found was important. And then maybe for the context matter, like say, for example, something new came up after your study was completed, something really interesting came up. You can actually try to cover that in your review of literature, but still, if you find it is important for the reader to understand it after they read your results, you can bring it into the discussion section. But at a DNB level, generally this does not happen. So be very careful about using new references. Again, here plagiarism is a very important aspect. Do not use, just lift texts from other theses or other documents. Please note, nowadays even certain theses are becoming soft copies. Some theses are getting published. So plagiarism software is able to even find that also. So be very careful about it, because a lot of digitization is happening. So a lot of these theses are getting digitized. So if it is available in any digital library, your plagiarism software will pick it up. So be careful about copying your senior's thesis, some other college's thesis, or other things. And again, if you do that, you are the one who is losing. You're only defeating the whole exercise of learning by doing that particular aspect. Now, a conclusion section is maybe needed, may not be needed, but sometimes in thesis it's good to write a very brief conclusion. Just to tell, I'd like to conclude by saying, I found this study and my experience in the study helped me to understand this. It should be very brief, and maybe you can add a little bit of how your study helped in the identify in the gap. So you can kind of be a little descriptive there, but don't make it too elaborate. Again, I've seen people writing in conclusion section, writing completely new references. The conclusion section should have no references. It is a free text of your impression about what you did. So there should not be any references. Ideally, should be zero references. Maybe something really relevant you can give, but if you're like defining something or something like that, but then generally it's not there. There's no reason why you need to define something new at that stage of concluding. So friends, this is very important as an outline from a thesis perspective, and each section has an importance. So it is important that you start writing this as soon as you get into your national board and you start thinking of a topic. You need to start collecting information that will help you to write this. So that's your protocol. Once you have clarity on what your protocol is about, you will be able to do a good study. Once you complete a study, you'll have clarity on what you need to write in your thesis. So this approach will help you to make sure that your thesis does not come back, because it's very important after the end of everything. If your thesis comes back, you are going to be in trouble. So these are the points which I would say that, and any thesis that you're writing, always keep that in mind. It is a research project. It's a systematically approach to a research question. And like I said, National Board is giving it equal importance of, or even more, I would say, even sometimes it's giving more importance to your thing, because if you have not submitted a good thesis, then you will not be able to write your exam. So if it is being held in that respect, that means to say you need to give it, that entire process, also some respect. It is an exercise in scientific writing, and this is very important to develop as a skill as a doctor. You should be able to know how to communicate scientifically, maybe to a peer, it may be to your seniors, it may be at a forum. If you don't practice that language of scientific communication, you will be at a disadvantage. So you should learn how to communicate scientifically, and this is an exercise for you to learn that process and be compliant to all the applicable regulatory requirements. And when I say regulatory requirements, it starts with your own institution. Like what Dr. Kanchi was telling, Professor Kanchi was saying, that you need to do it in 90 days, you do it in 90 days. You need to have your thesis completed at least 6 months prior to your exam. Please complete it. Don't come at the last 10th hour and saying, oh, guide was not there, topic was not given. I was busy here, I had some personal problems, I had that problem. Come on, you are giving excuses only to yourself. So please be vigilant about the importance of this particular exercise and do a sincere job of getting into it and writing a good thesis. I think I already spent time on the review of literature, so we'll just go straight into framing a research question, and that will be, we can kind of talk there. Any questions with regards to this section which I have just covered right now?
The chat box is empty as of now. I think as you go ahead, you might get more questions.
Okay.
There is nothing in the chat box as of now.
Okay, I have a quick question then to the audience, just to see if everybody is awake. How many of you all, can anybody in the group who has completed their protocol, unmute themselves and tell me about what is your protocol?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
So I'm Dr. Kedar here.
Yes.
Sir, I'm from cardiac anesthesia department. I have submitted protocol as well as I've got the approval also.
Yes.
I have my studies about the ease of cannulation of central vein and artery in a pediatric cyanotic as well as acyanotic patients with landmark technique as well as the ultrasound guidance.
Okay. So do you want to tell the audience a little bit about how you did your research question, developed your research question, and why do you think this topic is important?
Sir, this topic is important because there have been multiple studies previously with the ease of insertion regarding cannulation techniques. But the first thing about this topic is it is being done in a pediatric cardiac surgical subset of population, which has not been done before. And more than that, it is in a subset where there is a cyanotic and acyanotic congenital heart disease in the patients, which leads to many other factors that may create obstacle in the process of cannulation. So that way, my question
Now,
is regarding.
as a DNB student, what is the learning that you've got in this exercise that you went through up to the ethics committee?
The learning process was regarding how we can collect our review of literature. Then other things are regarding how we have to explain our protocol. Then methodology and the references, how we have to give them sequentially, and the Vancouver style and many more things that we come across in the process.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anybody else?
Sir, I have a very small question for you.
Yes. Good.
Sir, is there any target for how many pages a thesis should comprise of, minimum target or something like that?
If you ask me, the answer is no. Okay.
Okay.
Because if you are able to write a thesis which is interesting and it clearly grips the reader, see, it's about communicating the person and telling the person what you have, uh, what you started to do, what you did, and what did you find. Okay.
Yes, sir.
If all these three aspects are interesting, even if your thesis is just 5 pages, also it will go through. There's nothing
Okay.
called as minimum number of pages that is needed. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, those are all myths which have been circulated by our seniors. Even when I was doing my PG, also they were telling me you should have minimum of 50 pages and all. So we used to make up pages by writing review of literatures and putting one diagram in one page and all that. So I think all these are myths, and with more and more things going electronic and soft copy, it's always lesser is the better. Now again, you need to be able to explain yourself. Now if you are clear in what you have done, how you've gone about doing it, then you don't have to explain too much. You'll be able to, your topic will automatically explain itself. Now
Yes,
there
sir.
are certain topics which you have to do because of the elaborateness of the topic. You probably studied something and there's a lot that you have collected and the lot you want to describe. Then in such a situation you need to describe it. So I would say, uh, just for my thing, a 2 page, if you're writing an introduction for a paper, it should be half a page, but for a maybe for a thesis it can be 2 sides of a page. A review of literature not more than maybe 6 sides or 3 pages or maybe 4 pages it can be. But if it's really interesting, if you want to build a story and tell people why you want to do the study, you may have to go on to about 8 pages, maybe 8 sides of a page. So if you're printing on both sides of a page, if you're printing on one side, it will be 8 pages. Then comes the method section. The method section should not be more than 2 sides. Okay,
Okay.
method section should be because if you are writing too much in your method section, again it tells that you are not sure what you're doing. Okay?
Yes, sir.
If you clearly know what you're trying to do, you can. But then certain types of studies where your methods needs to be explained. Maybe there are like for your example, your topic, maybe there are multiple steps to be done. So, and those steps have to be standardized for it to be able to give an answer. So in such a situation, maybe you'll have to write some additional pages on your method section. And method section also covers about your sample size and all these things. So when you say materials and methods, it's kind of a large topic which has multiple sections in it. So if you put all the sections together, maybe you can go on to about 4, maybe 6 sides of a A4 size paper. Then
Yes.
comes the results part of it. Now, results part of it is where you have little more space and you can kind of make it a little more colorful by putting nice diagrams and things like that. But there again, be very careful about what diagrams you choose, what figures you choose. And if you are able to explain things in a table format, don't write it in text format. If you are writing something in text format, don't make it in table format. Now,
Yes.
it is difficult for sometimes at a student level to know the differences. So some people put tables and figures and explain the same thing in table, figure, and in text. Now, I don't think DNB minds it. Okay, DNB will ignore it and they will go ahead, but it causes a bit of irritation for somebody who's reading it. So it's not a good practice, but some people do it. Okay, so you have to be careful about that. I
Yes.
think discussion section is where you need to probably spend a little more time, a little more space. You need to be
Yes.
able to write a good discussion. And again, the weightage of this goes by the type of study. If you're doing a randomized controlled trial, then your method section, result section becomes more, your discussion becomes lesser. If you're doing an observational kind of a study, your discussion section becomes a little bigger. So it depends on each topic that you're choosing that you need to understand. But then there is no hard and fast rule that a thesis should have this many pages and all that. Even though
Yes.
it may be given in the national board guidelines, it is just to tell the person that you can't submit a 1-page thesis. Okay.
Okay.
Or you can't submit a 100-page thesis. You need to have some kind of a balance. So they give a number. But it really doesn't matter that you need to match up to that number. It is all about, if you have thought of a good topic and you created a nice protocol and you did a good study, you will have enough information to talk about.
Yes.
Dr. Alban, there are about 3-4 questions. Would you like to take it right now?
Yes, I can take it.
So the first one is, while doing retrospective study, do we need to take consent for cases done 2 to 3 years ago, as case sheets are available in the medical records, but the patient is not there?
So this is answered by ICMR in their latest guidelines called 2017 Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical Research. You will find the answer for that there. When you are doing a retrospective data review and the data is coming directly from medical records which are sitting in the hospital, you don't need to take consent from the patient. However, you need to take permission from the ethics committee that you are taking this data, and so you need a waiver of collecting consent because it's
That's
not
right.
practical for you to do so. And secondly, you need to take permission from the hospital authorities because this data belongs to the hospital. The hospital is the data controller. So tomorrow you will put it in a thesis, you will walk away, but the hospital can get into trouble if some patient sees that their data is sitting there. And so be careful about retrospective studies where I've seen some people writing retrospective studies, they collect entire details, they make a master chart, and that entire master chart is printed in the thesis. And somebody opens the thesis, the person's telephone number, home address, Aadhaar number, whatever you want, it's available out there. Like a directory of all the patients is sitting there. So be very careful when you're doing retrospective studies.
Absolutely.
The
I
information that
completely
you
agree
get,
with
you will probably be given this master chart from the hospital authority. They might say, okay, yeah, take this data, do it. Now, doesn't mean that you can just take it, and you have to be careful with it. So that is the reason why ethics committee is asking you to tell. You don't have to take consent, but you will have to take permission.
Absolutely. That's correct. The next question is, can we do a thesis on a retrospective study? I think the answer is yes. So I'll go to the next question. Sir, where should be anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology related thesis may be placed?
How much it should be? Okay. Now, this is a interesting question, and I think this is something which I was trying to explain in the review of literature. Now, when you're writing your protocol, you don't have to give this any weightage at all. You don't have to write anything about this in a protocol. But in your final thesis, if your clinical skills is also about learning the anatomy, learning the physiology, learning the pharmacology related to the pathology that you're working with, it is good to write a little bit about it because it is a student thesis and you are writing on a topic which you have learned. So the thesis is also aligned to your clinical training. So if there is something that you have learned as part of that and you want to explain that, it is important to write it. So in your final thesis, you can spend some time and space in writing that, which is good. It should be relevant to your line. If you're a surgeon, maybe you have to talk about anatomy. If you're a physician, you're doing some medical subject thing, you need to talk about physiology and pathology. If you're more in an infectious disease, general medicine, maybe you'll have to talk about pharmacology. So it depends. The weightage that you give depends on your topic and your training. What is your specialty that you're training on?
The next question is, sir, sometimes there will be technical words which cannot change in our own writing. Review of literature.
Okay.
So technical words which cannot be
It's a
changed.
good question, and this is the
Yes.
reason why you have an option called as referencing. So if you're referencing it, you have to tell that you're referencing it from here.
That's right.
If you are giving the exact words, you need to put it in quote unquote language. You should put it in quotes saying that this text is taken from the so book. That is okay.
That's right.
So
I agree.
like a definition, you can give a definition exactly what is there in some textbook. So you
Right.
can say that definition as per this book and put it in quote and put it in quotes and say this is the definition.
Yeah. The next question is, while writing the thesis, can we use bold, underline in the content in between the text for highlighting?
Uh, Not something which a DNB board is looking for. Okay, this is okay when you are writing a small article to some press or some journal or something like that. Again, there just to get somebody's attention. If you're writing a letter, you use this bold, underline, and all in a letter writing, or if you are trying to communicate to your senior authority something about it, you use bold, underline maybe for subheadings,
Yeah.
not for the text in between. It is not a good practice from a scientific perspective. That kind of things are done by marketing people. Marketing people like to highlight certain aspects for people's attention to happen. So you are not in the field of marketing. So best avoid it.
The next question is, thank you, Alvin, for that. Is it mandatory to attach master chart in the thesis, and should we hide the patient identity there in the master chart?
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
because patient information is confidential information, and this whole concept about master chart is about trying to tell them that you collected the data and you are the one who has brought all the data into the thing. Now you are also saying to the ethics committee that I will maintain confidentiality of my subjects. So then automatically you have to hide so you have to prepare a master chart without patient identity. That you
Yes.
should do right in the beginning, and you should have a separate register. I wouldn't call it a chart, a separate register which will identify the patient for you, so that you can go back and cross check something you want to.
Thank you, Alvin, for that. Can a pilot study be done for DNB thesis? I think so.
You have to be very careful about this. See, the word pilot, in some reviewers who read it, they think that you have not done a full thesis. So you'll have to be very careful about this. In a scientific world, if you are doing a topic for the first time, it is good to do a pilot study to be able to understand whether it is a feasible study. Can I do it? All those kind of things. Now, when it comes to DNB, it is a training component. So it's about you learning to do something. So it will be looked upon like as though you did not learn it fully. Okay, so be careful. I think it's better avoid. Don't use the word pilot. You can say that it is a single center, a limited analysis, or something like that. You can say where you've tried to introduce a topic. And trust me, every medical field, everything that you're training, there are thousands and thousands of topics which have not been addressed. All you need to do is go to the ward for 10 days and you will see at least 100 clinical problems on which you can write a thesis. So don't worry about topics. It is just that effort that is missing. So I really wouldn't encourage you to say this in your thesis, especially as a topic itself said this is a pilot study. Immediately the board reviewers of the board will think, just by reading the title itself, they'll think, oh, this fellow has not done any job, he's just done something. So it is a negative impression that goes, so it's better avoid it.
Thank you, Alvin. We are running out of time, and there are two questions. If you can give very short answers for that, that
Sure,
would be
sure. Are
appreciable.
KAP studies
KAP
permitted for
studies
thesis?
permitted for thesis?
It should not be only KAP, because KAP studies are considered more undergraduate level kind of thing. You are doing
Right,
it for graduates.
right.
You can add KAP along with something else.
That's right. The other important, interesting question is, if sample size target is not reached at the end of your study, how to proceed thesis?
This is an aspect of planning. So
Right.
whenever you start your study itself, you need to plan this very well. You need to
Correct.
talk to your guide. Your
Yes.
guide should help you in this. However, if an unforeseen circumstance comes, you can always explain yourself.
Like the COVID pandemic, which we are going through.
Yes, but
Thank you.
there again, we have to be very careful. I see many people using that as an excuse
Yeah,
when there's
yeah, yeah.
actually no reason for it. So be very careful about it. So at the end of the day, it goes back to my first topic, which I said, don't take thesis as an excuse. Try to do it as an important learning exercise.
Absolutely. Take it as a challenge and do it with full heart and mind put into that. It will become really something worth, which can cherish for the whole life. So it's not a burden, but it's a pleasant challenge, I would say. And with this, I think we should conclude because there's some other session coming at 4:30.
Sure.
And I would like to thank Alban for his brilliant exposition of how to write a thesis, going through introduction, review of literature, materials, results, discussion, and conclusion. Very well done. Thank you, Alban. We'll keep in touch with you. If there are any additional questions, we'll pass it on to you for you to reply. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everybody who has joined.
Thank you, Muralidhar sir.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Sorry.